so the verb that we covered in the previous presentation was the Madi verb. Madi means complete, and in English they call it the perfect verb. So the next verb is called the imperfect verb, the Mudhari, the imperfect verb. And imperfect is a cool word because perfect means complete, so imperfect means it's not complete. So either it's ongoing, it's happening now, or it hasn't even started yet. So the translations that are achieved from this particular verb that we're about to dive into are three translations. He helps, he is helping, he will help. So either it suggests that the action is occurring now in a general way, he helps, or it's present continuous, he is helping, or the third possible translation would be he will help. So these are the three translations that are associated to this verb. And the question is that from these three translations, which one would be the intended one? So that's relatively easy. It's not particularly difficult to figure out which one the speaker is intending, because when people speak, they don't use isolated verbs. The verbs will be part of sentences, and the sentences will be part of paragraphs. So from the earlier sentences within the paragraph, the audience will be able to tell which of the meanings is the intended one. And then there's more specific ways. So if you want to emphasize that it's the present tense that's the intended one, then there's ways of doing that. And if you want to restrict the verb to the future, so there's no possibility of present, then there's other ways of doing that. So the point here is not to go into the details, but just to give the basic table layout. Okay, so while I'm speaking, inshallah, the slides will appear. And again, the goal here is by the end of this 10 or 15 minute segment, I want you to be able to lift your head off the screen, pause the video, lift your head above the screen, off the screen, and be able to recite the entire table from memory. And inshallah, you should be able to do this. And you can let me know in the comments whether you were able to do that or not. Okay, so what makes the Mudhari verb, the imperfect verb, fundamentally different than the Madi verb is that the Madi had endings. The Madi had a set of suffixes, which were actually pronouns. So the alif in the second conjugation fa'ala, and the waw in the third conjugation fa'alu, and the ta, tuma, tum, ti, tuma, the tu, which was in number 13, and the na, which was in number 14, all of those were actually pronouns. But they were written connected to the verb in a way that it appeared as if it was a single word. But theoretically, we know that the fa'al part is the verb, and the na part is actually the subject of a verb, but that's grammar. Right now, we're not talking about grammar. Okay, we just want to be able to recite these verbs and be able to quickly identify them when we see them occurring in a book, for example, or where we hear them, or when we need to produce them ourselves. In a conversation, we should be able to pick the correct one and output it quickly without thinking too much about it. So that's the goal here. Okay, so the Madi table had a set of endings, and the point and the purpose behind those endings was to indicate the gender, the plurality, and the person of the one doing the verb, so that we know about the one doing the verb, whether it's a male or a female. And then secondly, we know about the one doing the verb, that whether we're talking about them, we're talking to them, or are we ourselves the ones doing the verb. And then the number, the plurality of the subject, whether it's a single individual, or whether it's two, or whether it's a group, speaking about, speaking to, or whether we ourselves are one person doing the verb or a group doing the verb, etc., etc. So that's the theory behind the 14 conjugations. So the point of the ending was to suggest that. Okay, now the Mudhari verb is different, because the Mudhari verb, in addition to having endings, it also has a prefix. So there's a particular letter that comes at the beginning of the verb. So before the first letter of the verb, you'll have either a ya, a ta, a, or a na, and the letters are 4, and they're included in the acronym Atayna. So the ya, it comes in 4 conjugations, the top 3. So they'll start off yaf, yaf, yaf. And then the ya reappears in conjugation number 6, which is the group of females. Don't forget that when you're speaking about a group of females, that's conjugation number 6. So it also starts with a ya, so yaf. And then the ta comes in 8 of them. So the 2 females, the 2 that we just skipped, conjugations 4 and 5, begin with a ta, so taf, taf. And then the yaf one, group of females. And then 6 tafs. All the middle ones begin with a ta. The prefix comes specifically in conjugation number 13, and the noon prefix comes in 14. So if you isolate just the prefix, here's how it will sound. So when I'm done doing this, I want you to pause the video and lift your head off the screen and repeat what I just did. Yaf, 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 taf, taf, yaf, taf, 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 afnaf. Or you could do it like this. Yaf, 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 taf, taf, yaf, 6 tafs, af, enough. Okay, so that's the prefix. So we're developing the table step by step. Okay, so now in the Madi table, if you remember, for the most part, all 14 conjugations, apart from the first one didn't have any suffix. It was just fa'ala. And that's not problematic because the rest of them have endings. So when you see there's no endings, then by default, it would be a single male doing the verb. And then the rest of them have either an alif or a waw or whichever one of those endings was there to represent the gender, the person, and the plurality of the one doing the verb. Over here, something similar will happen. In the Mudhari table, something similar will happen. But since we have a letter at the front, so that's why there will be more overlap that happens towards the end of the verb. So in the Madi table, one of them had no ending. Over here, 5 of them will have no ending. And this will be quote unquote the 5 singulars. So the first one, the fourth one, the 7th one. So he, she, you, when speaking specifically to a male, skip number 10 because the number 10 is unique. And then 13 and 14, all these 5, they have no ending. Instead, their last letter ends with a dhamma. So it will be yaf'alu, taf'alu, taf'alu again, af'alu naf'alu. So yaf'alu for the first one, taf'alu for the fourth one, taf'alu again for the 7th one. So the she one and the you speaking to a male actually are identical. They look identical. There's no difference. But again, it's not problematic because when people speak, they're not going to use isolated verbs. It's going to be in context. So it's relatively easy to be able to tell the difference between when a female subject is being talked about in the third person as opposed to when I'm addressing a male. So the two meanings are so polar opposite that using the same verb to represent a female in the third person and when speaking to one male in the second person is not problematic because of the context. Okay, so yaf'alu, taf'alu, taf'alu, afalu, nafalu. So be able to do that. Yaf'alu, skip 2, taf'alu, skip 2, taf'alu, and then 13, 14 would be afalu, nafalu. Okay, so the 5 singulars are out of the way. The next group of conjugations that we'll tackle is the 4 duals. And when we say 4 duals, we literally mean 4 duals. When we said 5 singulars, it was a little inaccurate because number 10, which is a singular, is not included in the group because that has a unique ending. And 14, which is actually a plural, when we're speaking about ourselves, group, that is not a singular, but yet it's included in the group. So we say quote unquote 5 singulars. So the 5 singulars have no extra letter beyond their third letter of the verb, and instead the verb ends in a dhamma. And the significance of the dhamma is beyond scope of today's presentation because that would be a grammar issue. And right now we're doing sarf. We just want to be able to output the verb. And we want to be able to recognize the verbs as they appear in the stories of the Prophet's book. Because the whole goal here behind this entire workshop is to begin reading as soon as possible. And in order to do that, you need to know the basic pattern for the Madi verb and also the basic pattern for the verb we're doing right now, which is the Mudhari verb. Okay, so the 4 duals all end in a alif followed by a noon, and the noon has a kasra. So yaf'alani, when speaking about 2 males, you say yaf'alani. Remember the yaf part, it's carrying forward from the earlier step. So yaf'alu, yaf'alani. Yaf'alu, 1 male speaking about them. Yaf'alani, 2 males speaking about them. And then we have our taf'alu, taf'alani, which would be 4 and 5. She, they, 2 females. Yaf'alu, yaf'alani, taf'alu, taf'alani. Skip the 6th one, and then taf'alu, taf'alani again. Taf'alu, taf'alani, speaking to a male, speaking to 2 males. So a lot of overlap. So 4 and 5 and 7 and 8 are identical. They look exactly the same. And then the 2 females, when speaking to 2 females, is again taf'alani. And then finally, afalu, nafalu. Okay, now moving forward with the plural masculines, which would be 3 and 9, their ending is a common ending. And again, it's not problematic because the prefix would differentiate whether you're speaking about a group of males or whether you're speaking to a group of males. So yaf'aluna would be the 3rd one, and taf'aluna would be the 9th one. So from the top, yaf'alu, yaf'alani, yaf'aluna, taf'alu, taf'alani. Okay, number 6 still needs to be developed. Taf'alu, taf'alani, taf'aluna, 7, 8, and 9. Taf'alu, taf'alani, taf'aluna, and then taf'alani, and then af'alu, naf'alu. Continuing forward, groups of females, their suffix is a noon, and the noon has a fatha. As opposed to in the 4 duals, the noon had a kasra. Lani, 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 lani. 4 of them, lani, 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 lani. And the 2 plural masculines were luna, luna, a waw plus a noon for the 3rd one, and a waw plus a noon for the 9th one. And for the 6 and 12, which is the group of females, whether you're speaking about a group of females, which is the 6th one, or you're speaking to a group of females, which is the 12th one, the pronoun is just the noon. And the letter preceding the noon has a sukoon, which is unusual because it only happens in 2 places. In the Madi table, the 3rd letter of the verb receiving a sukoon happened in all bottom 9, if you remember. Fa'alna, fa'alta, fa'altuma, fa'altum, so fa'al, 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 fa'al. And then it was coming, the pronoun was coming after the sukoon. Here, the sukoon happens on number 6, yaf'alna, and happens on number 12, taf'alna, and the 10th one is taf'alina. 10th one, when you're speaking to one female, the pronoun for that is a ya, preceded by a kasra, and the noon has a fatha, taf'alina. And the easy way to remember that is taf'aluna, which was the one immediately preceding the 10th, number 9, speaking to a group of males. So you have a group of males and you have one female. So the gender plural opposite, plurality also plural polar opposite. So what's the polar opposite of a waw? A ya. A waw preceded by a dhamma is for the group of males, and a ya preceded by a kasra is for the single female, not group of females, single female. So taf'aluna followed by taf'alina, and now we have the entire table. Okay, so let's do it about 2 or 3 times, and then lift your head off the screen, and then try to do it on your own. And spend some time with it, inshallah. You probably already have 70-80% of it nailed down already because of the step-by-step development of it. So yaf'alani, so from the top, yaf'alu, yaf'alani, yaf'aluna, taf'alu, taf'alani, yaf'alna. So the letter at the front changes. Again from the top, yaf'alu, yaf'alani, yaf'aluna, taf'alu, taf'alani, yaf'alna. So remember, yaf, 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 taf, taf, yaf. Okay, so when you're doing yaf, 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 taf, taf, yaf, you're also doing the last part, and you're adding the ending, the specific ending that needs to be there in order to represent the pronoun. You see, so there's distinguishing happening. Some of the distinguishing happens through the prefix, and some of the distinguishing happens through the suffix. And what allows the recycling of the same suffix multiple times here, as opposed to in the Madi table, is because we have 2 things doing it for us. And in spite of that, there's still some overlap. So bottom line is that when these conjugations are spoken, and when these conjugations appear in a book, when you're reading, or when you hear someone else speak them, then you should be able to immediately be able to distinguish the meaning. Okay, so it will be the responsibility of the speaker to make sure that they're keeping it simple and it's not cryptic. And the language then makes it easy, and the language is just structured like that, it's efficient. So our whole goal here is to explain the structure and the logic behind these things. So يفعل يفعلان يفعلون تفعل تفعلان يفعلن تفعل تفعلان تفعلون تفعلين تفعلان تفعلن أفعل نفعل. And then you just wrap it up with أفعل نفعل. أفعل is I, نفعل is we. And that concludes the Mudhari table, active voice. So if you want to say, instead of he helps, he is helping, he is helped. In other words, someone else is helping him. He is helped, he is being helped, he will be helped. Passive translations, all 3 of those can be converted to passive. Then yaf becomes yuf. And there's other modifications depending on the verb you have. So right now, for now, it's just yaf becomes yuf. Yuf'alu, yuf'alani, yuf'aluna. Tuf'alu, tuf'alani, yuf'alna. Tuf'alu, tuf'alani, tuf'aluna. Tuf'alina, tuf'alani, tuf'alna. Uf'alu, nuf'alu. And to make these verbs negative, you simply add a la at the front. In the Madi, where we're adding a ma, so ma fa'ala, ma fa'ala, ma fa'alu. So it's la yaf'alu, la yaf'alani, لا يفعل لا يفعلان لا يفعلون لا تفعل لا تفعلان لا يفعلن لا تفعل لا تفعلان لا تفعلون لا تفعلين لا تفعلان لا تفعلن لا أفعل لا نفعل. And the 4th one's لا يفعل لا يفعلان لا يفعلون لا تفعل لا تفعلان لا يفعلن لا تفعل لا تفعلان لا تفعلون لا تفعلين لا تفعلان لا تفعلن لا أفعلنا نفعل. So there you go. That would be both the Madi table as well as the Mudhari table. As much detail as needed in order to begin a book. Now that we're done with both the Madi as well as the Mudhari table, it might be a good idea to revisit the workshop, the 3-hour workshop, and rewatch that again in order to be properly ready in order to begin the reading book. And inshallah, I have a playlist of videos where we actually start the reading text and we go through the stories of the prophets, we analyze sentences, and we reinforce the grammar that we've taught, that we've learned over this period of time. So I really enjoyed creating this for you. Inshallah, let me know in the comments how you found it, and I'll link to the 3-hour workshop, and you can now proceed to that. And I look forward to speaking with you soon. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.